As her grandmother lay dying of terminal cancer, a young woman watched in awe as her grandfather refused to leave his beloved side. As the elderly matriarch slipped away, her granddaughter recorded her grandfather's last words, which perfectly captured the couple's 60-year love story. There is something about epics of conquering love that survive the test of time. Writers eulogize it, artists portray it, but few actually witness such a timeless example. Thanks to Emily Heim, this rare beauty was captured so that the rest of the world could marvel as well. As her grandmother slowly lost her battle with cancer, Emily decided to document the final moments between her grandparents. What she saw rivals any mythical romance because it captured not only the tender moments, but also the raw, selfless nature of true love. During the last few months of my grandma's life, I was blessed to witness something beautiful. And that was the unconditional love between my grandparents, she wrote. We used to tease my grandpa and say that grandma did everything, and he couldn't survive without her. But roles were reversed this past year. Emily Hahn detailed the end of her grandmother's medical journey, explaining that she became so weak and ill that her grandfather had become his wife's caretaker. Despite the difficult and gritty process, he never once complained, but did everything with incredible gentleness and patience. Through this, I have realized that the most romantic love story isn't Romeo and Juliet. It's grandma and grandpa who grew old together, Emily continued. It's grandpa sticking by grandma's side during the most difficult period of her life. It's him learning to prepare meals, do laundry, and cooking for her as she went through 6 rounds of chemotherapy. It's grandpa holding her hand, attending every doctor appointment, not leaving the house unless someone took his place as he didn't want her sitting alone, even for a few minutes. Emily lamented that her grandfather called her on the phone one day to ask her to help him make signs and decorations because he believed his wife would be coming home soon. As the dire reality of her condition became clear, he refused to leave his loved side. Even after they had accepted her fate, Emily's grandfather remained steadfast and strong for his wife. He made sure that she knew how much he loved her and how his desire for her alone was just as strong as the day he met her. She's more beautiful than ever. Doesn't she look so pretty? He'd say, after multiple strokes and as her body grew frail and weak. He continued to tell her how beautiful she was every single day, Emily wrote. Emily's grandfather faithfully stayed at his bride's bedside during her final days. So during her last moments on earth, his words to her were just as tender and loving as they always were. They had that kind of forever love, the love we all aspire for. They would have been married 60 years next month, and yet 60 years still wouldn't have been enough, Emily detailed. "Oh, you're so precious. Good night, my honey," are the last words he spoke to her. Emily Hahn watched as her grandfather bid his love farewell, just as if he were telling her goodnight and would see her again in the morning. Her grandmother passed away as peacefully as possible, lovingly embraced by her sweetheart. They met at a cycling club in England in their 20s, and I think it's safe to say that they ran the most important race together, Emily explained. They cycled like hell and pushed through all of the uphill climbs that life threw at them. They never gave up on being each other's teammates and took turns cheering each other on when one of them felt tired or defeated. They won the greatest race of all, a life full of love together. With her closing thoughts, Emily recounted the good times her grandparents had. However, she concluded that it was during the hard times that the couple's love shone brightest. Stories like this are truly the epitome of a successful relationship. They prove that exemplary love isn't defined by the perfectly romantic parts, but by how we respond to difficult times. This couple lived a life filled with love for one another, and it withstood the test of time. Their willingness to serve and put one another before themselves was the reason their love endured even the toughest trials.